She was my neighbor, living just one floor above me in the old apartment building where walls were thin, and lives often spilled into each other without permission. She was older, mid-40s, poised yet quietly guarded. The kind of woman who carried both elegance and loneliness in her step. I was in my 20s, still stumbling through the edges of adulthood, but every time I saw her, it was like the noise in my own life faded into the background. First, it was casual. A knock on her door when I noticed her lights stayed off too long. Offering to carry her groceries when I saw her struggle with the heavy bags. Small gestures, nothing more, or so I told myself. But the truth was I noticed her. I always noticed her. That evening, the hallway was dimly lit, quiet except for the hum of the elevator. She had just stepped out of her apartment, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes slightly tired but still shining in a way that unsettled me. We almost bumped into each other, and she stopped, studying me with that look she always gave when she suspected I was thinking too much. "You always check on me," she said softly, almost like an accusation, but laced with something warmer. Her words caught me off guard. I tried to laugh it off, to shrug, but my chest tightened. I saw her arms fold lightly across her body, as though she was bracing herself for my answer. And in that small, fragile pause, I realized what she was really asking wasn't about the knocks or the groceries. It was about why. Why me? Why her? Why did I care? I could have kept it simple. Said it was neighborly courtesy, that I'd do the same for anyone. But that would have been a lie, and something in me knew she'd see right through it. So I breathed in, steadying myself, and I told her the truth, at least part of it. "Because I care," I said quietly, my voice firmer than I expected. "More than you think." The words hung between us like a secret finally exposed. Her eyes widened just slightly, enough for me to see the crack in her composure. For the first time, she didn't look away. Instead, she held my gaze, and in her silence, I felt the air thicken, charged with unspoken things neither of us had dared to admit. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to say something, but no sound came. I saw the flicker of conflict in her, hope, fear, maybe even longing. My own heartbeat thundered in my chest. I crossed a line, one we both had carefully danced around for weeks, maybe months. And yet I didn't regret it, because in that moment I wanted her to know that her presence mattered, that she wasn't invisible to me, that I had been drawn to her strength, her solitude, the way she carried herself as though she needed no one, while every fiber in me wanted to be the one she could lean on. She finally whispered, almost too soft to hear, "More than I think?" Her voice trembled, and I realized she was giving me a door, an opening. I took a slow step closer, the distance between us narrowing. My chest ached with everything I still hadn't said, everything waiting to spill out if only she let me. And then, a sudden knock echoed down the hallway, a sharp, unexpected sound against the quiet. We both froze, turning our heads toward the stairwell door, where someone stood just out of sight. The fragile moment shattered, suspended between what was said and what was still waiting. The knock at the stairwell faded, just someone passing by. But the silence it left behind was heavier than before. I turned back to her, but she had already stepped half a pace backward. Her shawl clutched a little tighter, as though she needed to shield herself. That was when I realized how fragile this thread between us truly was. She cleared her throat, avoiding my eyes. "You shouldn't." She stopped, pressing her lips together. I almost asked shouldn't what? But the answer was written in the years between us. She was in her mid-40s, a woman who had lived through love, loss, and everything in between. I was just beginning my 20s, barely steady in my own life, still fumbling with who I was supposed to be. To her, maybe I was a kindness she didn't want to mistake for something more. But she was something more to me. I thought about her stories, the way she once mentioned her marriage had ended quietly years ago, not with shouting or betrayal, but with silence that grew too large to bridge. She never spoke much about him, but I'd caught the way her eyes dimmed when she brushed past the subject. She carried the weight of having once built a life, only to see it crumble, and since then, she'd been careful with her heart. And me? I had no history worth mentioning. A couple of short-lived relationships, nothing lasting. Nothing real enough to leave scars. Maybe that was why I kept noticing her, because she was real in ways the girls my age never were. She had layers, depth. She wasn't searching for herself the way I was. She already knew who she was. And yet, despite that difference, I couldn't shake the pull. Inside, my thoughts collided. This is dangerous. She could laugh. She could tell you to stop. She could remind you she's lived enough life to know better. But another voice, quieter and far more stubborn, whispered, "But she hasn't pushed you away, not yet. She's still here." Her voice finally broke the silence. "You're young," she said gently, but her eyes betrayed her calm. "Too young to waste your care on someone like me." I almost laughed because she had no idea. If only she knew that every knock on her door, every small excuse to check on her wasn't wasted. It was the only thing that felt right. "You don't get to decide what feels wasted to me," I said, softer than I intended, but steady. Her eyes finally lifted to mine then, and in them I saw it, the hesitation, the fear, but also something else, a spark she couldn't quite extinguish. We stood like that, suspended in the narrow hallway, the hum of the building's lights above us the only sound. My hand twitched at my side, wanting to reach for her but afraid of breaking the fragile balance. And then, almost without thinking, she brushed past me to unlock her door. But as she turned the key, her hand lingered on mine, just for a second. Warm, fleeting, enough to burn through my skin. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. That single touch said what both of us were too afraid to admit aloud. Her hand lingered on mine for only a heartbeat, but it felt like an eternity. By the time she pulled away and unlocked her door, I couldn't move. My body was caught between relief and fire, the imprint of her touch still burning into me. She stepped inside, half turning as if she expected me to follow, or maybe hoped I wouldn't. Her shawl slipped slightly from her shoulder, and for the briefest second, her vulnerability showed. Then she caught it, pulling it back up, composing herself. "You should go," she whispered, but she didn't close the door. I stood frozen, torn between respecting the line she was drawing and wanting to erase it altogether. My chest ached. My thoughts screamed. My heart didn't care. Before I could move, a sharp voice echoed up the hallway. "Mom? You home?" We both stiffened. The word mom sliced through the quiet like glass breaking. I hadn't even known she had a son old enough to visit. My stomach dropped as footsteps approached, quick and careless. She looked at me, panic flashing across her face, and all at once I understood. This was the risk. This was the taboo. I was not just younger. I was dangerously close to someone I should have never crossed. Her son rounded the corner, keys in hand, and froze when he saw me standing there in her doorway. He was maybe a few years older than me, mid-20s, his resemblance to her unmistakable. His eyes flicked from me to her, suspicion already building. "What's going on?" he asked flatly. I opened my mouth, but she spoke first. "He's just my neighbor." He was checking in on me. The way she said neighbor cut like she was pushing me back into a safe box where I belonged. Still, her voice trembled slightly, betraying her calm. Her son caught it too. "Checking in? At this hour?" His eyes narrowed. I forced a smile, trying to steady the moment. "I was just making sure she got home safe. That's all." He stared at me for a long beat before shifting his gaze back to her. "You don't need him to babysit you, Mom." The word mom landed heavy again. It was meant to remind both of us where we stood. She pressed her lips together, nodding, but her hands fidgeted at her sides. She wasn't as composed as she wanted him to believe. "I'll head out," I said quickly, stepping back. My heart thrashed against my ribs. But as I turned, I caught her eyes, just for a second. And in that second, everything unsaid screamed louder than words. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed it. The touch of her hand, the look we shared, her son's suspicious glare. I wanted to tell myself it was over, that the line had been drawn and I needed to respect it. But my phone buzzed past midnight, and her name lit up the screen. Can you come by tomorrow? Afternoon. My breath caught. She was the one pulling me back in. The next day, I stood outside her door, nerves thrumming. When she opened it, she didn't smile. She looked tired, guarded, but her eyes softened when they landed on me. Come in, she said quietly. Her apartment smelled faintly of coffee and lavender. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting the room in warm gold. She closed the door, and the silence pressed in. You shouldn't have stayed last night, she began. My son doesn't. He wouldn't understand. I know, I admitted, but I couldn't just walk away. She sighed, sinking onto the couch. That's the problem. Neither of us seems to be walking away. I sat across from her, the space between us too wide, too charged. Do you want me to? I asked carefully. Her eyes lifted to mine, full of conflict. Yes, she whispered. Then softer, almost breaking. No, my chest tightened. She looked away, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I've been alone a long time. I learned not to expect things like this. And now you come knocking, always caring, always noticing. And I can't pretend I don't feel it. But it scares me. I leaned forward, my voice low. It scares me too. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, the air between us thickened with possibility. My hand inched toward hers on the couch cushion, hesitating, waiting. She didn't move away, but just as my fingers brushed hers, her phone rang. Loud, jarring. We both jumped. She grabbed it quickly, answering with a clipped, "Hello." Her voice softened immediately. "Yes, I'll be ready by 7. She hung up, exhaling shakily. "Dinner," she said. "With my ex-husband. He wants to talk. My son insisted I go." The words landed like a knife. Suddenly, the wall between us grew taller, thicker. She looked at me, guilt shadowing her features. "This is what I mean," she whispered. "My life is complicated. You don't deserve to be tangled in it." But even as she said it, she didn't let go of my hand. We sat there, caught between two truths. The world that expected her to move on safely, predictably, and the pull between us that refused to quiet down. And in that fragile silence, her fingers curled ever so slightly around mine. The following evening, I couldn't sit still. Every sound from the hallway, every echo of footsteps made my chest tighten. I knew she'd gone to dinner with her ex-husband. I knew she was supposed to return hours ago. And still, I paced my apartment like a restless shadow, every nerve stretched thin. Finally, the familiar sound came, the click of her heels against the worn floor. My heart leapt. Before I could stop myself, I was at her door, knocking softly. She opened it slower than usual, her shawl still draped over her shoulders, her hair slightly tousled. Her eyes told the story before her lips did. "How was it?" I asked carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, then let out a brittle laugh. "It was dinner, that's all." But I didn't believe her. Not when her gaze darted away. Not when her hands trembled as she untied her shawl. I stepped closer. "Did he hurt you?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that. He just—" She trailed off, her throat tightening. "He wants us to try again. For our son's sake." The words sliced through me. My stomach knotted, jealousy flaring so raw I almost couldn't breathe. "And what do you want?" My voice came out harsher than intended. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp, wounded, conflicted. "Don't ask me that. I have to," I said, stepping fully into the room. "Because I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter. You matter. To me. More than I can explain." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She shook her head, pacing toward the window, gripping the curtain like it could anchor her. "You're too young," she whispered, almost pleading. "You don't understand the weight of this. People will talk. My son will hate me. My ex will use it against me." I moved closer, my voice breaking. "Do you think I care about any of that? Do you think I knock on your door every night because I'm bored? Care about you. I can't. God, I can't hide it anymore." Her shoulders tensed. She turned, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. And what happens when you wake up one day and realize you've wasted your youth on a woman who already had her chance at love? What happens when you leave? Because you will. Her fear crashed into me like a storm, but instead of retreating, I reached out. My hand caught hers, firm, trembling with the weight of everything I hadn't said until now. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered. "Not unless you make me." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her breath uneven. The distance between us shrank until I could feel the heat of her skin, see the tears caught in her lashes. We stood there, inches apart, the world narrowing to just us. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. And then her phone buzzed on the table. She froze. I froze. The screen lit up with a name neither of us wanted to see. Her ex-husband. Calling. Her phone kept buzzing on the table, the name flashing like a warning neither of us could ignore. She finally snatched it up, silencing the call, but the damage was already done. The moment had cracked open, and the fragile truth between us was suddenly exposed to a harsher light. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down. "I should answer him," she whispered, almost to herself. I swallowed hard, my voice rough. "Do you want to answer him?" Her eyes darted to mine, and for the first time, I saw something close to panic. "It's not that simple. He knows. Somehow he knows." The room tilted under me. "Knows what?" "That you've been here. That we've been talking." Her words broke, her voice laced with fear. "My son must have said something. He was suspicious last night." My stomach dropped. The safe bubble we'd been pretending existed had just burst. It wasn't just us anymore. It was her family, her past, her ex. All the things she'd tried to protect herself from were now circling like predators. I stepped back, my pulse thundering. "So what happens now? Does he use this to drag you back to him? To make you feel guilty for wanting more?" She flinched, as if the truth was too sharp to touch. "He already is. At dinner, he didn't just ask me to come back, he threatened me. Said if I didn't, he'd make sure our son saw me as selfish, as reckless." Her voice cracked. "And if he finds out about you?" My chest burned with anger. "He doesn't get to control your life anymore. Not him. Not your son. Not anyone." She shook her head, tears brimming. "You don't understand. He still has a hold on them. If my son believes his father, I'll lose him. And I can't lose him. He's my world." Her words sliced deeper than I expected. For a moment, jealousy twisted inside me. Jealousy of the love she still gave her son, the ties that always pulled her away from me. I hated myself for feeling it, but it was there. I moved closer, my voice breaking. "And what am I? Just someone you'll push away because it's easier to let him win?" She stared at me, stunned. "You think this is easy? Do you think I don't feel what's happening between us?" "I do. Every time you look at me, every time you knock on my door, I feel it. And it terrifies me." Her confession hit like a blow and a bomb at once. I reached for her, but she pulled back, shaking her head violently, tears spilling now. "If I choose you, I lose everything else. If I choose him, I lose myself. Tell me, how do I survive either way?" The silence after her words was unbearable. The air between us trembled, heavy, fragile, on the verge of shattering. And then, 3 sharp knocks rattled her door. We both froze. Her son's voice carried through, low but edged with suspicion. The knocks on the door echoed like a drumbeat, each one tightening the noose around us. She wiped at her cheeks quickly, pulling herself together, but her hands shook. I could see the war inside her, the urge to open the door and the urge to collapse into me. "Mom!" Her son's voice pressed through again, firmer this time. "Please." She turned to me, eyes wide, almost pleading. "You have to go." I shook my head, heart pounding. "Not like this. Not before you know, before you choose." Her lips parted, but no words came. The tears she'd been fighting broke free again, slipping down her face. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. "Tell me the truth, just once. Not what he wants. Not what your son wants. What do you want?" Her body trembled, every muscle caught between surrender and resistance. Then, in the smallest, most broken voice, she said it. You! The word tore through me, leaving me raw and breathless. I reached for her, pulling her hands into mine. She didn't resist this time. She clung to me like she'd been drowning and finally let herself reach for air. But the pounding on the door grew louder, sharper. Her son's voice, now tinged with anger, cut through the fragile moment. Mom, open the door. Now. She flinched, her grip tightening on me. I saw the fear return. The fear of what came next. Judgment, fallout, the wreckage of choices too late to undo. Then be brave, I whispered. If you want me, stop hiding. Stop letting them decide for you. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, terrified, but alive in a way I'd never seen. She leaned closer, her forehead pressing against mine, and for a heartbeat, the world outside that door didn't exist. I don't know if I'm strong enough, she breathed. You are, I said, my voice breaking. And if you're not, I'll be strong for both of us. The door rattled again, her son's frustration spilling over. She pulled back just slightly, torn in two. Then she made her choice. She turned toward the door, her hand still gripping mine. She didn't let go. With her free hand, she unlatched the lock. The door swung open, and her son stood there, eyes wide, his gaze dropping instantly to our joined hands. Silence. Heavy. Crippling. He looked at me, then at her, betrayal flashing across his face. So it's true. She straightened, her voice shaking but steady enough to carry. Yes, it's true. The words landed like a thunderclap. She'd spoken it aloud. Not just to me, not just to herself, but to the one person she feared hearing it most. Her son's face hardened. Mine burned. Her hand in mine trembled. But she didn't pull away. For the first time, she didn't hide. What would happen next, whether forgiveness or fury, love or ruin, we didn't know. But in that charged, impossible moment, at least the truth finally belonged to us. The silence after her confession stretched like a wound, raw and open. Her son's face hardened, his jaw clenched, his eyes flicking from our hands to her trembling lips. Mom, how could you? He whispered, anger wrapped around hurt. Her grip on me tightened. She didn't let go. Her voice shook, but there was a strength in it I hadn't heard before. Because for once, I'm choosing what I want. I'm tired of living for everyone else. Her son flinched, his hands curling into fists. He's my age. He's a kid. I felt the weight of those words. Kid. Too young. Out of place. The very fears she had voiced herself. But before I could defend myself, she spoke again. He's not a kid, she said softly but firmly. He's kind. He listens. He sees me. And maybe you can't understand that right now, but one day, maybe you will. Her son shook his head, hurt flashing across his face. I can't. He stopped himself, swallowed hard, and stormed down the hall without another word. The sound of his footsteps faded, but the echo of his anger lingered in the air. She sagged against the doorframe, tears spilling freely now. I've lost him, she whispered. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. No, you've told him the truth. Sometimes that's the only way love survives, even if it hurts first. For a long moment, she buried her face against my chest, trembling. The fight, the fear, the weight of years seemed to pour out of her all at once. I held her until her breathing steadied, until the storm passed. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were red but clear. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. With him. With us. Neither do I said honestly. But whatever it is, we'll face it together. No more hiding. She searched my face, as though testing the truth of my words, and then, finally, she smiled. Not a wide smile, not a careless one, but a quiet, steady smile that carried the weight of everything she had been holding back. That was enough. The world outside her apartment hadn't changed. There would still be whispers, judgments, complications. But in that small room, with her hand still resting in mine, Everything felt possible. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. Maybe it wouldn't even last forever. But for the first time, neither of us was pretending anymore. And sometimes that's the bravest kind of love, the one that doesn't promise perfection, but promises honesty. As I left her apartment later that night, I glanced back once more. She stood in the doorway watching me, her figure bathed in the dim hall light. And for the first time since this began, I knew we weren't two strangers grasping in the dark anymore. We were two people daring to step into the light, together. 1.